Ouais, bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à Courtside FM, le podcast de basketball québécois absolument à consulter. Si vous voulez en apprendre plus sur vos Québécois et Québécoises du monde québécois dans le fond de basket. Puis aujourd'hui, nous autres, on a encore un épisode spécial. Dans le fond, vous avez vu il y a quelques semaines l'épisode avec Loïc. Puis aujourd'hui, on a un autre coach du collégial Division 1 qui est avec nous, dans le fond, qui coach les Cavaliers du Collège Champlain-Saint-Lambert, Daniel Martin. Fait que, salut Martin, ça va, Daniel, ça va bien? Excuse-moi.
Ça va, ouais, merci.
Oui, dans le fond, on l'a expliqué un peu. C'est sûr que nous, on essaie de rendre les gens un peu plus confortables. Fait que ça se peut que, dans le fond, le podcast soit entièrement en anglais. Mais on va voir à quel point est-ce que Daniel il se libère avec son français au travers du podcast, là. Puis, si on voulait commencer, dans le fond, nous, on peut probablement te poser les questions en français, mais c'était quoi ton premier contact avec le coaching?
First coaching was probably in high school. I went to a very small high school outside of Toronto. And for better or worse, there was always coaches missing. So I ended up starting coaching a younger team there when I was in grade 12. And then after I finished at McGill, I was lucky enough to catch on as an assistant coach the following year. So after I graduated, I started as an assistant coach under Craig Norman from there, and that was really the beginning for me, I would say, of high level basketball. I was coaching with Craig at McGill.
Puis cette opportunité-là, McGill est venue comment?
Dis ça encore, j'ai pas compris.
Euh, l'opportunité de coacher à McGill est venue comment?
But I mean, I played at McGill for 5 years, and I had a pretty solid career. I guess I had a good start, and then I blew out my ACL in my third year, and my role changed a lot going into my fourth year and my fifth year after I had surgery. I made some poor decisions in terms of how I rehabbed and ended up kind of filtering into more of. I mean, I was the captain for my last 3 years, I think, or 4 years. And I just couldn't play at the level that I needed to play at anymore, and ended up contributing more, just in terms of helping guys out and helping guys understand. And then once I graduated, it was kind of I mean, it turned out to be a pretty easy transition to switch over to coaching. And I also graduated with a degree in physical education, so teaching was part of what I was learning while I was there anyway. And Craig and I at at throughout my career, definitely we butted heads at times, but in the end we kind of we realized that we shared a lot of the same philosophies, so it was pretty easy to join in and just start right after graduation.
Dans le fond, tu aurais coaché des gars avec qui tu as joué aussi, là.
Yeah, it was a very tough. Looking back now, actually, I lost a lot of friendships, that of guys that I played with, just because, especially when I started, I really felt like I needed to make it clear whether I was coaching or playing. And obviously some of the stuff that you do with your teammates is not the same stuff that you do with your coaches. So it definitely hurt some relationships. And now, that was 15 or 20 years ago. So, obviously we've reconnected at times, and, we see each other at weddings and that kind of thing. But it was definitely a different path, I guess, that normally you would be pretty close with those guys. And in a way, I'm closer with the guys that I played with in my first, second, third year, and who I didn't end up coaching after that, because the relationship really changed once my role changed.
Mhm.
Puis justement, tu sais, tu as fait quelques années comme assistant à McGill, puis après ça, tu as quitté ce poste-là pour t'en aller justement où est-ce que tu es en ce moment avec les Cavaliers du Collège Champlain-Saint-Lambert. Puis pourquoi est-ce que tu es allé prendre ce poste-là?
I mean, really, I mean, it's funny how things come about, but after I think it was 3 years as an assistant with Craig at McGill. He left and Dave DeViro replaced him. And I stayed on for a year with Dave. Dave actually recruited me to play at the University of Ottawa 10 years prior to that. And so we knew each other a bit, because he's from Toronto originally as well. So we'd crossed paths a number of times. So I really benefited from that year with Coach DeViro as well. Obviously a national team coach and one of the best offensive guys there are in the country. So I had a great chance to do that. But at the same time, John D'Angelis, the former head coach of Champlain, left Champlain to become the lead assistant at McGill. And so I moved down a little bit, which was, it was a different thing, and it was another chance for me to learn a little bit from the two of them. But the following year, Craig Norman got hired at Champlain, and offered me the lead assistant spot there. So I left McGill to go back and rejoin him at Champlain. And I knew that his plan was not to stay indefinitely at Champlain. He was far overqualified for that job, and it was obvious that he would not stay that long. And so I felt like it was a good opportunity for me to have another year or two as an assistant, and then probably be in a good spot to move into a head coaching role there.
Est-ce que ton but dans le coaching, ça a tout le temps été être le head coach ou être un assistant, ça te dérangeait pas nécessairement?
I mean, they're very different, right? Like, I think I was really lucky at the beginning of my career to spend time as an assistant, both with Craig and with Dave, and both of them were very different as coaches. So I got to benefit a bit from, seeing two sides, two different ways to do practice, to do game plans, to do player development, player relation. All those were very different. I think it's critical, for coaches to develop, to spend time as assistant coaches, to have a chance to be the one to make suggestions, and to have, there's much less pressure on you when you're the assistant. You can come up with all the ideas, and it's up to the head coach to decide whether they're good or not. And when you're the head coach, then you're really the one that's making all the decisions. So I mean, I would say I like doing both. It really is. I mean, all of basketball, I think, is all about relationships. So if you're lucky enough to work with a good head coach, it's a good situation. And right now, I've had many assistants over the years at Champlain, but really without fail, they have been excellent people as well. And it's different when you're, at the level that we're at than when you're in the NBA or NCAA, when there's millions of dollars on the line. I think now it's really a collaboration, and you're working together with the coaches. Obviously, in the end, the head coach has to make the decision, but I value the input of the assistant coaches quite a bit, and I was lucky that my head coaches valued my input. So both offer different opportunities, but both are valuable in the development of coaches, I think.
Et en étant un assistant, justement, tu l'as mentionné, ça te permet d'apprendre du head coach. Si toi, tu as été chanceux, tu as eu deux head coachs de très bonne qualité dans tes débuts, là. Puis,
Ouais.
tu sais, ça t'a bien moldé quand même parce que, justement, tu as eu Coach of the Year 2 ans de suite avec Champlain. Puis, comment c'était, tu sais, comme feeling, tu sais, de être head coach puis d'être reconnu comme le meilleur head coach?
But I mean, looking back, in some ways, I think I had already a pretty good feeling that, the head coaching award is definitely, it's nice to win, and it feels good, but people that have been around basketball know enough that the coach that wins is not necessarily the one that's, I think I've actually done a better job in other years where I didn't win that award. It really has to do with the quality of the players by and large. I think some of my best coaching years have been in times where we've finished, sixth or fifth or whatever. But the progression has been very strong, and the relationships that I've built with the players has been very strong. And when you win the Coach of the Year award, for sure, you made some good decisions, and you did some good smart tactical stuff and whatever. But most of the time, I think if you go back and look, the Coach of the Year award goes often to the team that has the Player of the Year as well, and probably wins. And having great players makes good coaches look even better. And having players that are just not as talented physically, you can still be a great coach and not win very many games. And honestly, to tie it into another topic, but I would say that's one of the things that in Quebec we're missing right now, is that the younger levels, coaches are still being judged on whether they win or lose. And at mini and bantam, that's not something that, as a parent, I wouldn't be looking at so much. Yeah, you want to have competitive games, but if your teams are, pressing full court, or you have the best player in the league and he's taking 45 shots a game, to me, that's not really a coaching thing. It's just you happen to have the best player. So I would look, at other things like the the body language of the players on the bench, or the body language of the players when they get subbed out, the interactions between the coaches and the players. Those are the things that I think are critical to coaching, especially at the younger levels, whether you're, playing man or zone or whatever. Those things are, to me, not as important. And although wins, the first place team almost always is the one that gets the Coach of the Year award. But probably it's more deserving, and I think most coaches would agree, to some of the guys that probably are not, are 500, but have scraped out some really good development, and have formed some really good connections with the players.
Puis c'est qui vote pour ce award-là? Est-ce que c'est les autres coachs? Est-ce que c'est
C'est
la
les
ligue?
autres coachs. Ouais, c'est les autres coachs. Ouais. T'as pas le droit de voter pour yourself,
Bon.
mais de voter pour les autres. Ouais.
Fait que dans le fond, c'est logique pour eux de juste dire, ah, la meilleure équipe, ben, c'est eux les meilleurs coachs, mais c'est pas
Bah,
nécessairement.
on permit, it's like how else are you going to decide? When I vote for it, I certainly look at, this, this year Wayne Yearwood, very deservingly won. He had the best team. They won, 20, whatever it was, 2019 out of 2021 games. They had a great record. You look at other teams that, I thought, Momo, for example, overperformed. They really got the most out of their players. And that to me is, Marco was close to, he's obviously won it in the past too, but, was deserving of being considered for it as well, even though he finished with a 500 record, maybe, or something along that line. It's how much do you get out of the players that you have, not just so much you have a stacked team and you roll through the league. So I try and balance the two a little bit. I think usually in the end, I end up voting for the coach that, it's first place or second place. That's obviously what we're trying to do, but try and base it a little bit too on, how did they get better as the year progressed? Did they seem to come together as a group? Those things to me, I think, are important in that award too.
Oui, tu parles beaucoup de gagner, gagner. C'est sûr que c'est pas la plus importante, mais c'est le fun. Puis toi, en 2014-2015, tu as gagné le championnat dans le fond d'équipe, en collégial Division 1, un championnat provincial. Puis à quel point est-ce que ça l'a fait du bien de gagner ça, là, d'être la meilleure équipe au Québec?
If I'm being totally honest, and again, I think most coaches would probably agree. I guess there's two things. The coaching part of it is really, the winning, it is what it is. It's the losing that really bothers me. It's not so much the winning that feels great. It's the losing that I hate. And even when we win, there's still a million things that we did wrong. And that year we won. Obviously, we went to nationals. We played well in one game. We didn't play well in the other two. We had some injuries and stuff, but the winning lasts for about 30 seconds, and then I think most coaches are back to being grumpy and trying to figure out how to play better or that kind of thing. But as you get older, I think the winning becomes less important, and the quality of play becomes more important, and the relationships with your players as well. And that holds true, I think, for players as well. When I think back of playing at McGill, I can maybe think of maybe 3 or 4 games that I'm sure we won or I'm sure we lost. We beat Illinois in triple overtime in a preseason game where Michael Jordan's son was playing on the team, and it was a whole thing. I remember that game, but there's not very many where I remember the wins and the losses. But I definitely remember the experiences, the bus ride to Laval in the snow, or the whatever it was with the teammates and that kind of thing. So ultimately, the wins and the losses kind of fade together, and they blur together, and you lose sight of them. You remember a few here and there, but I'm always going to go back to it. It's the relationships that you form, and the experiences that you have with your team, that's the only reason to do it. Because if you're only there to win, like you said, it was 2014, it's 10 years ago. If I was only doing it for wins, it would be an awful hard time to get up to go to practice every day. But I'm more in for the relationship, so I don't find it hard to go.
Puis comment tu fais pour un peu, tu sais, les joueurs, la plupart du temps, ils jouent juste pour gagner. Puis, gagner des games, des trophées, des championnats. Comment tu fais pour un peu inculquer ta mentalité de il y a autre chose que juste les victoires et les défaites?
But that that's the $1 million question. Certainly recruiting players that I think can see, or I can see them progressing down a similar path is very important to me. I tell every kid that I recruit that I'm recruiting them first because I'm convinced that I want to spend time with them in terms of being at practice and film and development and all that stuff. If they're just really good at playing basketball but they're unpleasant to be around, I don't get paid enough money to do it. I have two young girls at home, a very understanding wife at home. If it was $1 million, then yeah, I probably would do it. I would probably recruit some unpleasant guys that were really good. But the reason that we're all doing it, all the coaches at CJEP, is really we love basketball and being around youth and trying to help kids kind of develop and get to where they want to go. So I'm really, when I'm recruiting, looking for guys that they're maybe not there yet. They maybe don't see it yet, but I think that I see down the road that, yes, obviously we all want to win. For sure, I need kids that want to win. But I need kids that want to work hard. I need kids that want to be part of a team. I need kids that want to learn something. Like I said, I'm a teacher at heart. That's what I do most. If kids don't want to learn, then there's no point in me recruiting them because it's going to be an awful couple of years. So trying to find that mix is tough, but that's that's what I was saying before. When I go watch a high school game, you score 20 points, that's great, but I don't really care. I'm more interested in what happens when your teammate takes a bad shot. What's your body language like when your coach subs you out, or when your coach tells you you're doing this wrong? How do you react? Those are the things that in the long term, I think, make the better players.
Puis, tu sais, si on fait un peu un saut plus tard dans plusieurs années, on a vu en 2019 que tu as commencé à coacher U15 Team Québec. Puis dans cette équipe-là, tu sais, ça a été une année incroyable pour le Québec, là, 4 médailles d'or. Mais dans ton équipe U15, il y avait quelques athlètes que toi, tu as la chance de coacher contre en ce moment. Tu sais, on a eu le MVP de la Ligue de cette année, Christian Payawal, ou même Raphaël Dumont pour Vanier. Euh, Est-ce que ça fait un peu bizarre justement de dire, hey, comme tu sais, quand il avait 15 ans, je l'ai coaché.
Yeah, I mean, it puts coaches that, obviously I'm not the only one from CJEP that's held that position at any given time. It does help you in some ways develop a relationship with some of the top guys in Quebec from a younger age. But there's also tough decisions that you got to make in terms of playing time and how you're running your offense. And so sometimes kids will leave the Quebec team feeling pretty good and it's a good relationship, and sometimes they'll leave not being happy with you either. So there's some advantages and disadvantages to both. But there's Carl Cleofat, who's at Vanier, Raf, like you said, Christian. There's guys kind of spread out throughout the league, and I'm thrilled to see them doing well. Christian was a special player, and we're part of the reason that we didn't win at Canada Games was he was unavailable for that team, and I really think that he would have made a tremendous difference in that group. Raf is obviously an elite scorer, and Carl is the kind of guy, exactly the kind of guy I was talking about. Just works hard, willing to sacrifice for others. They're all great players, and finding the match with the CJIP, it depends on so many things. So it's actually not that it's not that weird playing against them. It's kind of fun playing against them. And I enjoy seeing them, how they've improved and how they've changed. And I think I'm on very good terms with most of them still. And I like the Vanier guys. I wish them all the best for nationals, obviously. And Christian winning player of the year is an unbelievable accomplishment.
J'ai aussi eu la chance de coacher U18 aux Jeux du Canada. Ça, c'était juste avant la COVID, dans le fond. C'est ça?
No, after.
Après, ok, excuse.
Ouais.
C'était comment cette expérience-là?
It was much different than I expected it to be. I think Canada Games for the basketball world is kind of under the radar, as well as the national championships with the provincial teams. Like, it's a bigger deal than I thought it was. The whole ceremony, there's an opening ceremonies. You walk in just like the Olympics you see on TV, and there's a stadium filled with thousands of people, and you know, the national anthem was playing. It's really it's really different than what I thought it would be. You know, the caliber of play is obviously very high. I think there was something like 9 of the 12 national team guys were represented, you know, between all the provinces. Obviously we had a couple of them, which was great. Certainly the most talented team that I've ever coached, and a bunch of them have gone on to, you know, get D1 scholarships at mid-major and better schools, and a bunch of them will play in the U sports as well. I think almost everyone that was on that team will end up playing in university one place or another. But it was a different experience being in a situation like that. Again, I was lucky, you know, I had Nathan Grant as an assistant coach, who obviously just won a national championship at Laval, which is pretty unbelievable. Had already coached in the Canada Games, so was able to lean on him quite a bit for his experience, which helped. And Alejandro there too as the third assistant coach and the technical director for Basketball Quebec, has coached in huge games for the last 30 years. So yeah, it was different, but it was definitely one that I'll remember. You know, I was disappointed that we didn't get a chance to play for a medal that game, but it's the way basketball goes. The kid hit a shot, and there's not much that you can do.
Ça fait partie de la game, c'est sûr.
Yeah, it just comes that way sometimes. I mean, we did forget to switch on a ball screen that led to that shot happening, but you know, he hit a shot.
Puis, tu sais, tu as parlé un peu que tous ces jeunes-là allaient finir par jouer universitaire. Puis, il y en a 6 en ce moment qui sont en NCAA. Mais est-ce que c'est toi qui les as approchés ou c'était un open tryout, là?
Pour le U18, c'est un peu plus nous qui approchait parce qu'on connaît plus les joueurs de U18. Quand on a fait le tryout pour U15, c'est vraiment nouveau. J'ai pas regardé beaucoup de matchs de U14. Puis, ouais, mais ça a changé aussi parce qu'avant de COVID, on a fait beaucoup de CIPs. C'est comme un tryout, mais on a fait beaucoup. C'est peut-être 1 fois par mois. Puis, on est voir, c'est un groupe 7 mois, puis le prochain mois, c'est 10 qui jouent à un autre match, puis on va voir un nouveau 10. C'est permettre nous vraiment de faire une bonne évaluation. Mais pour le U18, j'ai déjà coaché le même groupe à U15, puis j'ai fait le recrutement pour CJEPS. Je connais plus le joueur. Les autres, c'est then we knew like Chris Tajo's in Mexico, Thomas Endong's in Mexico. We know they're going to be on the team. Olivier Rioux from IMG. Obviously, these guys we knew already, and we weren't putting them through a tryout. So the U18s was a different group. You know, this year with the U17s, certainly I know the kids more, but it's still open. It's not like you and you're on the team and the other guys no chance. It's you know, we have tryouts coming up in the next month after the high school championships are finished, and we'll go to make 15 guys and then select from there down to 12.
Puis, tu as parlé de Olivier Rioux, tout le monde le connaît, il a gagné Tallest Teenager in the World.
Yeah.
Puis, comment est-ce que c'est de côtoyer quelqu'un d'aussi grand, là? Comme, est-ce qu'à un moment donné, tu as mal en arrière à force de look up quand tu le coaches?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've never been around someone with that much size. You know, it was different coaching him for sure, because you just, you know, no one has anyone that big. You know, figuring out how to utilize him best and how to, you know, work the team and the shots around him. It was a challenge for sure, but I mean, Olivier, to his credit, is, you know, one of those guys that could have had a big head and could have demanded this and that, but he really wasn't. You know, he was so happy to be back, I think, in Quebec, playing with some guys that he knew, you know, just speaking French too on the bus and having it easier. It was just like, to me, he was able to go back to being, you know, he's 16 years old, relax a little bit, be a kid a little bit, and not have to always be on and be some expectation of, you know, we're sitting down for lunch and people will come up and ask him for pictures and can this and that, and at some point the guys were just like, all right, that's it, like, leave him alone, you know, and the team kind of circled around and just kind of had to keep people away, because it's such an you know, CBC was there and these guys were there. It was a whole thing. So it was definitely different coaching him too, but really a fun experience, because he was so willing to work and so willing to do whatever we asked him to do and contribute however however he could, which was it was very fun to be around, knowing a guy who's got so much expectations surrounding him all the time.
Puis c'est comment coacher des équipes comme Team Québec, puis le 18, où tu sais, c'est des gars qui se connaissent, mais qui ont jamais vraiment joué ensemble, puis tu tombes
That's
plus que
yeah.
moi.
That's the big challenge, obviously, for the Quebec program is to try and put these guys together and get some semblance of a team figured out before you go into competition. I think when you look at you know, the different provinces, there's two very different models. Newfoundland, PEI, Nova Scotia, they all have selected their team already, usually at least a year in advance, and then they will practice, you know, like a regular team almost. You know, if Nova Scotia, for example, you have probably 95% of the players come from Halifax. So they practice, whether it's weekly or monthly, but they're together for a long time. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have Ontario, who's really putting together a team 2 weeks before the tournament. Obviously, Ontario right now has more talent than everyone else and a much more depth. I think Quebec is, you know, in the top, when you're talking about the top 5, top 10, even top 15 players, we're really pretty close with them. But Ontario has 100 players that are almost as good as the top 15. And Quebec, you know, we have 10 more guys that are pretty good. But after that elite group, the talent level drops. It's just a question of population size, obviously. So, you know, when we're selecting the Quebec team and starting to put it together, finding guys that can play together is not easy. And fitting them together, it's one thing we've changed a little bit is we're now kind of moving through the cycle. So I was the U15 group last year I had, and I'm going to move up with them for the U17s this year. And then the following year, I'll have them again for the Canada Games. And for us, we'll have the U15s this year. And then the plan would be that he would progress with them as well. So there's a little bit more. It's not everyone, obviously, that makes the team, but there will be certainly players that played for me last year that are with us this year. And there's some continuity, and it just makes it easier to teach and that. So that's part of it. And then the biggest thing though is just building the team character and the team chemistry. And it's difficult. You can't do it fast, right? There's no shortcut to doing that. So we try and, you know, we're at a training camp for 5 days. We do some team building stuff. We're around, you know, for a extended period of time around each other, and the players. By U17, I would say, you know, the U18 guys, they know how to play basketball, quote unquote. So it's easier on the floor to, you know, this is what we're doing. Okay, let's go do it. The U15s, the challenge is to get them to understand how to play. You know, different programs that are coming from, usually the talent level, they're so much better than everyone else. They're used to being able to do a lot of stuff that I don't like so much. So getting them to understand is tougher, but they're also much more willing to learn. And that's one of the great things about the U15s is they're just like, tell me more, tell me what to do, explain this, explain that. So it's very fun coaching them because they're not, you know, they're hardly teenagers and they're very willing to listen. The U17, U18 group, you're fighting a little bit with, you know, this is the way I want you to do it, and they have the way that they've been doing it. So that's a bit of a difference between the 15s and the 17s.
Puis, tu sais, là, tu as parlé de elite players, puis du top qu'on matchait quand même l'Ontario. Puis toi, dans le fond, dans ton année 2019, tu as eu la chance de côtoyer, je ne sais pas à quel point tu leur as parlé, etc., mais tu as eu la chance de côtoyer quand même Bénédicte Mathurin puis Olivier Maxence Prosper, qui sont deux gars dans la NBA. C'était quel type de jeunes? Là? What kind of kids were they?
I mean, both of them were very hardworking. They were guys that already, I would say, acted like pros. Even as you know, 16-year-olds, they understood that they had a chance. You know, the number of kids in their scenario is thousands and thousands, and they knew that yes, they have the size, they have the athleticism, they have the, you know, all the tools are there, but that only is the very tip of the iceberg in terms of whether you're going to make it to the NBA or even to play pro somewhere. So I would say the thing to me that stood out was that they were the ones that really acted like pros, and they were never late. they were never fooling around. They didn't mess around with their warm up. They didn't mess around with their stretching. They didn't mess around. They were professional basketball players. And that really helped that team win a gold medal because all the other guys were like, oh, well, I guess if, Ben's going to be on time, then I better be on time. I guess if Ben's going to wear his jersey the correct way, then I have to. And so they were excellent leaders, just in terms of setting the example, effort on the court. The two best defenders in the tournament were Ben and Omax. And that, as a coach is all you can ask for, where you can say, well, this is the guy that's going to be a lottery pick, and he's out there playing full court and diving on the floor. And this is the guy that's going to go to a high major school, and he's the one on the glass all the time. So their leadership was tremendous. And to me, superseded they're incredibly athletic and talented and all those other things, but those leadership and the approach that they had was what allowed that team to do so well, was because they just didn't mess around. They were there for a reason. They get in, they get out, and that's it. They're on to the next thing.
Parce que, tu sais, dans un tournoi comme ça, c'est une semaine à peu près. Fait que, tu sais, si tu t'es pas là pour. Si t'es là juste pour, comment on dirait, fuck around, puis juste comme. T'es pas là comme en business mode, ben comme tu vas pas ressortir de là avec une médaille.
Yeah, that's it. But it's not even the things that you think of. It's just the little, how do you eat in the team dining hall? Like, they eat like pros, and they didn't eat 4 scoops of ice cream. They had their protein and they had their carbs, and that was it. Like, they just had a different level of appreciation for the place that they were in. And it's rare, and it's one of the problems with well, I mean, with all kids, probably with adults too, right? Is that we're not so dialed in all the time. And yeah, we waste 5 minutes of practice, throwing half court shots, and Ben was in the corner working on his left hand ball handling. They just didn't waste time like that. And you see some of the other guys that have some size and have some athleticism, but they don't improve as much as those guys did. And Ben, I would have said, was not the best shooter around, and now he's a good shooter in the NBA. Lugens Dort, same kind of thing, like just outworked everyone around him, and that's where they end up where they are. But it's not because they're bigger and faster and stronger. Lots of people are big and fast and strong. They outworked and they outlistened to everyone around them.
Ben, c'est comme ça que tu m'as dit que c'était en outworkant les autres, c'est comme ça que tu dépasses les gens qui étaient meilleurs que toi.
Yeah, that's the key to everything.
Puis là, tu sais, si on parle un peu plus de cette année, dans le fond, tu sais, ce qui est plus récent, vous avez eu la chance, tu sais, à ton école de host le championnat provincial. Est-ce que tu avais un peu un output, un input vraiment comme comment ça se passait, ou c'était plus l'école qui s'en occupait?
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to do with that per se. I mean, obviously, I'm around, and I guess it's discussed a bit, but by and large, we have a really, Champlain is very lucky because we have such a good support group, with Vince at the head of the organization, I guess, leading the way. They take care of uniforms and food and locker rooms, and they really just let me coach and worry about the other stuff and let the guys play. They don't have to worry about any of that. I would say, with no disrespect to the other CJEPs, but Champlain's, the logistics are about as good as it gets for a CJEP. And that is part of the reason why we've had, success in the past years. And I think we'll have success in the future as well.
Mais surtout que, tu sais, vous avez un beau gymnase, des belles estrades, announcers.
Ouais.
Moi, c'est ça qu'on me dit tout le temps. Si tu veux voir un match de basket qui est comme un match professionnel, va voir à Champlain.
Yeah.
Announcers, big crowd, fans like screaming and everything.
Yeah.
C'est ça qu'on m'a dit que c'est la meilleure chose.
There's a great environment there. Obviously, Mokan, started at Champlain. I don't know, it's got to be 10, 11 years ago. And there's another guy, honestly, talk about professional, like before he was well known, but he would be at practice on Wednesday or Thursday before the Friday game, watching us practice to get a better feeling of the guys, how they play, what are we doing? You know, he'd ask after practice, what's the plan? What's this? What? And then he shows up with a folder of notes ready to go. He's prepared. And same thing, like he was a professional before he was a professional. And I'm not at all surprised that he's moving his way up. And every time you turn on the broadcast, it's Mo Khan doing some kind of a sports thing because he just is so much better prepared than everyone else. So we've had that obviously advantage. We also have, great alumni. Peter Yiannopoulos obviously is very implicated in things going on at Champlain, and is very involved in the NBA world and is always there. And John D'Angelis, the coach that was there before me for so many years, Hall of Famer, is still available for help whenever I need it. It's a very strong group at Champlain, and you need that. I think, Nathan would say the same thing he's got at Laval. You need that infrastructure behind you to be able to have a chance to win some stuff and produce some good results. Without the infrastructure, it's really hard to get things done because there's just no time. The CJEP coaches all have full-time jobs somewhere else or at some other function in the building. You need people that can take care of the stuff that needs taken care of on their own, and at Champlain we're lucky to have that.
Est-ce que ça t'enlève un certain poids sur les épaules, tu sais, que tu sais que tu as le support de l'école, puis que tu sais, t'as leur confiance, puis de chaque coaché, t'as pas besoin de penser au reste?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Like it's just the buses are organized. They're always there when they're supposed to be there. The uniforms magically are cleaned. We just leave them and the next day they show up and they're done. The schedule, all that stuff is all taken care of. So it really, it makes it easier to academics. We get a bunch of support, the strength and fitness stuff. There's someone there to help with that. So there's a lot of that in the background going on that maybe people don't see, but is really key in the success of the program or any program, because we can't do all that stuff as a part-time head coach.
Ben, je suis sûr que les joueurs pourraient faire leur lavage eux autres mêmes quand même, là, tu sais, all young adults.
Yeah, I mean they take care of their own, but it definitely makes it easier. And I think it's actually important, that it's the same thing we were talking about before. We need to treat them to some degree as pros so that they can treat themselves as pros. And their job is a student athlete right now and student first, obviously, but they have a very heavy schedule in terms of training and school and all this stuff. And if you go to the States and you see a university program, or even in Canada now, their days are very regimented, and not that they've gotten too good to be doing their laundry or to be doing these other things, but they have other jobs, and everyone has a job to do to be successful in the program from the top to the very bottom. I actually watched a D1 team practice in Montreal. I don't know how many years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And they had a assistant manager. I don't know what his role was. But part of his job was to keep the floor, when the guys sweat on the floor, to towel it up. And, I was sitting there watching, they're running their sets and whatever. And that manager, full sprint, dive on the floor, mop that floor at at a speed you can't imagine, turn around, full sprint back to the bench. Like he was dialed into his job, like his life depended on it, and it just stuck with me because it's you need those support people who are willing to do work even when no one's going to give them a bunch of glory or a bunch of whatever. They don't get to be on TV, but they have a huge role to play. And everyone that we often say, I often say to my team, the people in the stands are going to cheer when you hit a 3-point shot or whatever, but we all know that's not the important thing. The guys on the bench are going to cheer when someone takes a charge, or someone helps someone up from the floor, or whatever it is, because the people that are there every day know the real important things, like having a guy that's willing to whatever, check on someone's marks, or sit and help them with an essay, or mop the floor, or all these little things that no one else sees, but the people that are around really know that's the difference between a successful program and a not successful program.
Well, for sure, me and Matisse would agree that if we get paid well enough, I'm gonna make sure that floor is squeaky clean.
Well, that that's it. I mean, I don't know if the manager was getting paid or not. Maybe he was a scholarship manager, but it's finding those guys and girls, and there's many of them. You know, Patricia is one at Basketball Quebec, who hours and hours of work that you would never, you know, that no one ever sees. But you need the buses there, you need the schedule, you need the forms, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And people don't see it. And the players, you know, it goes back to what we're talking about at the beginning, the players that acknowledge that, yes, maybe they're not going to do the laundry, but they're appreciative that someone did do it. Maybe they're not going to mop the floor, but they're appreciative that someone did do it. Those are the guys that you want to be around.
C'est pas des choses, c'est des petites choses auxquelles on pense pas nécessairement, mais c'est quand tu enlèves toutes ces petites choses-là, c'est là que tu te rends compte à quel point elles sont importantes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, you when teams are winning and things are going well, it looks very easy, because all the little things are being done. And when things are not going well, you know, you wonder why are they not going well? And it's not the missed shot or this, it's all the other little things that go into it. You know, to put it in a basketball sense, it's the screens are so important. The pass, whether it was here or here, the other four guys have to move and make the same decision. As you know, you need all these guys doing all of these things just so that the ball can go in the net, and the crowd goes crazy when the ball goes in, and they all are sad when the ball misses. But that really was only the very tiny little bit of the things that we all know is critical for the ball going in or not.
Mais écoute, principalement, merci, Daniel, de nous avoir partagé toutes tes expériences, d'avoir coaché universitaire. Puis là, tu coaches depuis quelques années Team Québec, tu as même coaché tes NCAA guys qui ont des chances d'aller dans l'NBA. Nous, on a vraiment aimé ça, t'entendre, puis vraiment en savoir plus, là. Puis je suis sûr que les gens à la maison aussi, là, tu as pu nous parler des joueurs qui sont les idoles de basket québécois.
My pleasure. I think if I can, you know, leave those younger players with one or two things, I would say the first thing is in North America, your school success is attached to your basketball success. And the first question that every CJIP coach asks every player is, how are you doing in school? And regardless of whether you're 6'8" or 6'2", you have to pass your classes. And it's getting harder and harder to get into CJEP. The competition level is getting higher. I would say for every hour that you practice basketball, you should be spending 1 hour studying. I've never told a kid, and I don't think any coach has ever told a kid, look, your marks are too high, you know, you're doing too well in school, I'm not interested. But at many times I have told kids, look, I can't recruit you because you're not going to get into school. And, you know, if you're a borderline guy, whether you're going to be a D1 CJEP player or a D2 CJEP player, you're an 80, 85, 90 student. For me, you're, you know, a decent kid. Like that's someone that I'm automatically interested in because I don't have to worry about their academic success, you know? So your marks are almost as important as your jump shot and your whatever else. Like you got to do well in school. The second thing would be skill development is critical. Everyone needs to be able to pass, everyone needs to be able to dribble, and everyone needs to be able to shoot. You know, they've done a million studies. The amount of time you spend with the ball in your hands per game is some ridiculous, like 1 minute or something like that for the point guard, and everyone else is like 30 seconds. So, you know, your ability to screen and to rebound and all those things, those are all skills that all the coaches are looking for. I have so little interest in your Instagram highlight of you, you know, throwing a dunk down or whatever. Like it's fantastic, but that's not going to get you recruited. You really need to be able to pass, dribble, and shoot, be a good teammate, work hard. Those are the things that the coaches, regardless of where you want to go, are looking for. And then the last one I think is kids now need to play in more games where they're not the best player. And maybe that's I'm an old guy being grumpy now, but it seems like I remember when I was young that I would play, you know, we would play in men's league. I had a chance to play in summer league against guys like Joel Anthony and Dwight Walton and Trevor Williams and Wayne Yearwood and guys that were way better than I ever would be. Ricky Volsi, Mannix, all these guys that had great careers and are great basketball players, but being not the best player on the court allowed me to get better so much faster because I couldn't get away with stuff that I can get away with when I'm just better than everyone else. When you're the tallest, when you're the biggest, when you're the fastest, everything is pretty easy. But I'm trying to do a layup and Joel Anthony's coming to try and block it. Like I realized really quick that it was a different, I had to do different things. I had to learn different things. And I think now kids are doing a lot of individual workouts and a lot of skill development, which is good. But then they get to the game and they don't really know how to play, and they don't know how to take it when they're only getting 3 shots a game instead of 30 shots a game. So to me, those are the 3 things that as a basketball community we really need to try and develop, and so that we can continue to produce. I mean, we've had some great success, but I think we're also underperforming in the terms of how much talent we do actually have in the province right now.
Mais ça fait du sens. C'est une bonne chose. Puis, tu sais, c'est important qu'ils deviennent meilleurs au basket, mais juste better kids. Puis, il faut qu'ils soient capables de prendre un rôle, là, parce qu'il y en a partout là, dans le monde, là, des role players qui sont importants.
Yeah, but that's that. Joel Anthony is such a great example of that. Obviously, 2 championships, millions of dollars, and his job was to rebound and to screen primarily. But then you see him working out in the summer, and he's an elite 3-point shooter. He's an elite post-up player. He's unbelievably good at all of these things. But he's willing to accept a role and help his team win and play better. And that's the kind of player that works his way up and ends up, 2 NBA championships. You can't beat that. But he was willing to play hard, and again, he was willing to help a guy out. He probably doesn't even remember who I am, but he was very helpful to me playing against him and just explaining, like, why should I do this? How should I do that? All these little things make a big difference when you're playing with people that are better than you and are willing to help you out.
Ben, justement, merci encore, Daniel, pour tout ton temps. Puis, on a vraiment apprécié te recevoir.
No problem. Anytime. I hope we can connect again soon, maybe after the summer the provincial stuff is done.